Hello, my friends. I hope everybody's doing great. And I'd like to talk about a few things today. One thing that I saw on my morning walk today, there's this little pond that is between my house and a high school. And I always walk my puppy back there. And I was walking past the pond and I noticed wild yellow flowers growing pretty much everywhere around the pond. And my first thought was, wow, this is very beautiful. And then the second thought that popped into my mind was how nature has this powerful ability to function without our expectations or our intentions, our desires, expectations, our aversions against what we don't like. Nature, despite all of these emotions that we have, nature is still able to function quite perfectly. The tree that is outside of your home doesn't grow or stop growing based on your emotional feelings. And so, as I noticed the beautiful yellow flowers encircling the pond, the thought that rose for me is that nature did this without even trying. However those flowers grew there, it all just happened organically, naturally, and essentially it happened without anybody planning it to happen. And then when we think about our own lives, I believe so much of the suffering we experience is a result of expectations. Either we want something to happen and it doesn't happen, or we don't want something to happen and we have a bunch of fear, A, that it could happen, or B, that, um, well, essentially, when we have the moment we have desire, kind of like a two-sided coin. We have desire for something, and we instantaneously have fear against its opposite. So, desire, it may seem like we just want something or we expect something, but actually, we're maximizing the likelihood we're going to be unhappy because we have an expectation that a certain thing will occur, and simultaneously, we have an expectation that the opposite of that thing will not happen. So, in any experience in our life where we are driven by desires, expectations, wants, and um, needs, or you could say hopes and fears, we are basically almost guaranteeing that we're not going to be happy. So, back to the example of the flowers naturally growing around this pond, can we here's a question I would pose to us, and I pose this to myself just as much as I pose it to you. Can we live our lives without so much calculated effort? Can we live our lives without trying to control the outcome in every situation? When we try to control the outcome in every situation, essentially we are trying to control the uncontrollable. It would be like trying to defy gravity and jump off the earth into space. It's impossible. You cannot jump off of the earth into space. And so trying to control a situation is just like trying to jump off the earth and jump into space because you cannot control any situation. That situation might go the way you want it to, and you might feel that you controlled it. But actually, control is impossible because it's only a matter of time until things don't work out the way you wanted them to. And then you have to learn the hard way that you can't really control anything. And so when we think about the beautiful flowers growing around the pond, those flowers grew there effortlessly. They grew there independent of the people that live nearby. The people that live nearby were not out there planting those flowers. They're just beautiful wildflowers. And so, could our lives be equally beautiful if we stop trying to control everything? This doesn't mean that you stop doing what you need to do. I think it would be helpful to exercise common sense when we receive a Dharma teaching. The fact that a teacher, in this example, I'm the teacher, the fact that a teacher suggests letting go, that doesn't mean you stop doing everything. It means that you, whenever humanly possible, you try to give the experience that you're in space. You try to empower the experience itself to arise the way that it needs to arise, rather than you trying to force it, right? Rather than you trying to make people, places, and things do what you want them to. And this is not easy to do. We have habitual behavior patterns, we have habits that we have been practicing for years and years. And each particular habit that we've undertaken has probably been done tens of thousands of times. So when somebody poses this idea or proposes this idea or suggests this idea that we let go, it may sound great. And it does make a lot of sense if you understand that suffering mostly comes from the opposite of letting go. Suffering mostly comes from trying to control people, places, and things. But understanding that this is a path to freedom and peace and happiness is not the same thing as being able to practice it, right? And so I think the first thing I wanted to touch on today was this idea of, these beautiful wildflowers growing organically as a result of the situation itself, whether it was birds dropping seeds or wind blowing the trees nearby or the flowers nearby, and then these new wildflowers growing. It was the situation that made that happen. So can we try a little bit, and you may not be able to do this right away, but can we try a little bit to experience the process and the flow of life without trying to force everything, without trying to make things happen, without trying to control the outcome in every situation in our lives? Can we try to experience the process itself without any real clear-cut expectations, without any strong effort? Why would we do this? Because if we can let go of the need to control, if we can let go of the clear-cut effort, if we can let go of the expectations, then we can actually have some contentment, peace, and gratitude with every situation, with every result, rather than being happy if one thing happens and being totally unhappy if any other thing happens. Which, if you think about statistics, if you want one single thing to happen, you have to consider that infinite things can happen. So if your expectation is that one single thing happens and that statistically infinite things can happen, then take one divided by infinity, and your likelihood of getting what you want is very, very low. And your likelihood of being unhappy is very, very high. It's actually just math, right? So that would be why we can try to be like the pond, allowing the wildflower, allowing the beautiful yellow flowers to grow at their own pace, allowing them to spring forth based on all of the infinite causes and conditions that contributed to them. The question is, can we do that? It's not easy. And when you begin to try to let go, you will notice the, the concept of letting go is actually very simple. It just means that whenever you want anything or whenever you don't want anything, you let go of that thought of wanting or not wanting. And then the next time it comes back, you just let go of it again. And you keep letting go, releasing the thought, allowing it to be there and do what it wants, but not really, not really obsessing or fixating on it. So understanding what it means to let go is actually very simple, but doing it is very different. And that's kind of the second thing I wanted to talk about. When we practice Dharma or any type of spirituality, we have a practice that we're doing. And so let's just take this practice of letting go. We have this practice of we've learned that life is going to unfold the way life is going to unfold. And for us to try to control it is foolish because you can't. So we make this decision, oh, I want to start to let go of negative emotions like anger, fear, anxiety, aggression, jealousy, denial, resistance, um, being defensive with others. We decide we want to let go of these negative habitual patterns. And we learn very quickly that they are not easy to let go of. At least they're not easy for me to let go of. And so then you find yourself very frustrated because you're trying to do a practice and you learn very quickly that not only is the external world out of your control, but your own mind is out of your control. And so we have to be very, very patient and very gentle with ourselves. We have to understand that the fact that we cannot instantaneously let go of everything does not mean that the practice is impossible. It just means that we have to learn how to do the practice and we have to get more repetitions. If you really want to learn how to let go of things, you have to do it thousands and thousands of times. And every time you let go of something, it gets a little bit easier. Maybe it's 0.1% easier every time you let go of something. So it certainly will not happen overnight, but you will, if you can let go of one very small thing, whether it's you really want to have a snack that you know isn't good for you, if you can at least let go of it for 5 minutes, maybe this is a good way to practice this, to begin the practice of letting go. Let's say you really like soda or you really like chips or you really like sweets, maybe you like eating candy. Well, to just give up candy altogether is very difficult. If you try to just, let's say you eat or you drink a soda every day, Coca-Cola or whatever, Coke or Pepsi or Sprite. Let's say you drink one of those every day. If you try to just stop doing it, that can be very difficult. I mean, if you can do that, that's wonderful. And then if you do that, if you let go of that, it'll be very hard the first day. And then maybe even a little harder the second day. And then the third day, it'll be easier. And then the fourth day, much easier. And then, 2 months from now, you will have forgotten that you used to drink Coke or Pepsi or soda. However, let's say you can't do that. Let's say it's too hard for you to let go. Just whenever you want to have that soda, make a decision that you're going to wait 1 hour. So then you're letting go for 1 hour. And then maybe when you do have that soda, drink half of it instead of 100%. And then slowly, maybe then tomorrow when you want to have it, wait 2 hours and then drink half of it. And then the next day when you want to drink it, you wait 4 hours and only drink, you know, half of it. And then eventually you just stop doing it altogether. So that's an example of how we can let go. The other thing is, generally speaking, we can start to let go of small things. If you have this giant issue in your life, this big traumatic memory or this something that you're very emotional about, it might be hard to let go of that. So maybe you have to start with letting go of something that, isn't terribly important to you. Maybe when somebody does something that you find slightly irritating, you just let go rather than yelling or getting angry. You just let go of it. And so if you can start to, maybe strategically pick some of those things in your life that aren't, huge, big issues, but, they're opportunities for practice, that might be a good place to let go of things. But back to my second point, which is that understanding a practice is not the same thing as mastering it. For example, me personally, I know that love and compassion is the absolute best practice that I could ever engage in. But that doesn't mean that I'm, always able to, bring up the feeling of love and compassion. In fact, I would say more often than not, I'm not able to. So I know what the correct practice is. I know, and I have faith that it's the right thing to do, but I'm not able to do it all of the time. I'm far from perfect. So when we engage a journey and a path of practice, I would say don't make the mistake of thinking that a practitioner is hypocritical because they're not perfectly practicing. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people tell me, well, that's not a very Buddhist thing to say. And, the on one hand, it's critical that we know the right answer and that we have, the aspiration of love and compassion and the aspiration of letting go of all of the negative things that are so heavy in our minds. But we really need to understand that the fact that we're trying to implement these things and we're not able to do it perfectly for many years does not make us a hypocrite. It makes us human. And so make sure that you understand that nuance. Make sure that you understand the subtlety of always having the right outlook of what we should be trying to aspire to. We should always be trying to aspire to love and compassion. Don't allow the fact that you can't always do it, or even don't allow the fact that you fail at it 99% of the time. Like myself, I would say a lot of these practices, I fail at them 99% of the time. But when I remember to do them, I have full faith that love and compassion are the best possible answer. And that doesn't make me a hypocrite. It makes me a deeply flawed human being. And I would say that we all are. And that's why Buddha gave us all of these wonderful and beautiful teachings that the teachings themselves, I believe they are perfect and I believe they work perfectly when we apply them perfectly. And that's the real aim of our practice is it is to apply the teachings in a perfect way. First, we have to understand them and intellectually understand them and see that they are logical and using intelligence and reasoning, picking them apart and saying, does this really make sense? And then once we've done that, you could call that, receiving a teaching. You could call that hearing or reading, however you're receiving the teaching. So, hear, and then step two is reflect, and then step three is meditate. And the reflection is basically just this contemplation and analysis using logic, using human intelligence, and using reasoning, analyzing if that teaching is right and correct, and making sure that it stands up against logic and reasoning. And once you've done that, once you've reflected and analyzed, then it's time to practice. And in my life, more of my practice is happening when I'm not on the cushion. So you could say more of my practice is informal. We could be a very serious meditator and meditate 2 hours a day, but then you have 22 other hours during your day where you're not sitting on a cushion. So I think it's very important to prioritize. Of course, we should be meditating on the cushion because that's really where we get a lot of we're able to create calm and peace in the mind, and we're able to make really good progress because we're focused on the practice when we're sitting on the cushion. And then when we're not doing, sitting on a cushion, when we're not in formal meditation, we should really make, you know, practice a priority, whether it's letting go or whether it's trying to respond in a respectful, passionate, and loving way with others. We should really try to prioritize that practice when we're not on the cushion. And, back to my second point, understanding a practice and knowing it and even having great faith in it is not the same thing as applying it. And we are not going to be able to perfectly apply practices. And we need to be patient about being incapable of perfectly applying the practices. So we need to be patient about that. And we need to make sure we know the difference between practice being correct and us knowing it's correct and us applying it. Knowing a practice is correct and not applying it doesn't make us a hypocrite. And don't just give up because you're not able to apply a practice. Keep the aspiration, the highest aspiration is love for all sentient beings. The fact that you don't feel love for all sentient beings is not a reason to give up on that aspiration. This is really important, and it's something that I feel like I've kind of crystallized in my mind lately because the more you practice, for me, it's almost like the more I just kind of accept that I'm a I'm a bad practitioner. I'm a poor practitioner versus the perfect aspiration. I'm very far from being able to constantly have love and compassion for all sentient beings, but I'm pretty close to always knowing that I should. And I think that that is huge progress because before I didn't even know I never knew that I always should. I never knew, 20 years ago, I never knew that I should always have love and compassion for all sentient beings. I never knew that. I never knew that I should let go. So I would say if you can put your practice under the right microscope, and that is the 10,000-foot view, every day we make a little bit of improvement, and then before you know it, 20, 30 years later, you've made huge strides towards Buddhahood. You've made huge strides towards liberation and freedom and being free of all these negative emotions. So that was the second point, the understanding the nuance between aspirations and applications, and always trying to hold that aspiration, no matter how bad we are at applying it, always trying to hold that highest aspiration. That's a really beautiful and supreme goal. Always having that aspiration to perfectly let go of whatever arises. Even if we fail to do it 99% of the time, not losing faith that it is the right practice. One last thing, maybe the third point I'd like to touch on is understanding that contentment and peace arise based on our outlook. And what I mean by this is We think that we'll have peace or contentment or joy. We think that we'll be living a good life if certain things happen in our life. We think, oh, I'll be happy if I have a beautiful house, or I'll be happy if my health is better, or I'll be really happy if I can find a beautiful husband, beautiful wife, a perfect job, have wonderful kids. Whatever your mental imagination tells you is a good life, you can substitute that um, in this scenario. So we all have these ideas of what we think will make us happy. And usually it has to do with money or relationships, maybe money and relationships. You could say money, relationships, and material wealth or material objects. Those are kind of the things that we think will make us happy. I don't believe that those make us happy. I feel quite strongly that the Buddha was correct when he taught us that happiness, peace, joy, contentment happen based on the mind. They happen inside, not outside. And I think this might be one of the most important practices or one of the most important life lessons we could ever hear. And a good example of that is people that are going through a relationship. When you first meet somebody, you get all of these chemicals in your mind and body. You get all these chemicals going off in your brain and your body, and they basically make you temporarily intoxicated. And I think that romance is kind of like an addiction. And I think that's why you see so many people that have been divorced two, three, even four times. It's because they live for that intoxication, that high that you get when you first fall in love. And so people that are having relationship difficulties, they they believe because it really seems logical that if they could fix things with their partner, that they will be happy. They really believe that if their partner would just do what they want their partner to do, then they would be happy. If he would just do this, then I would be happy. If she would just do this, then I would be happy. And so what we end up doing is we spend a lot of our time in this relationship with the other person trying to get them to do what we want them to do. And that never really works out, does it? You can't really control other people. No matter what, you try to control somebody, they'll find a way not to do what you want them to. And that's their right. That's their freedom. Everybody is free. You know, everybody's mind is free to do what it needs to do and what it will do. And for us to assume that we can impose our will on our partner, it's not realistic. Now, if our partner is engaging in self-destructive behavior, or if your partner is harming you, if somebody's beating you, you need to get out of that relationship. You need to run away. But if it's more of I don't like the way you try to force me to watch your TV shows, and you tell them you don't want to watch that show, you want to watch a different show. And then you have these giant arguments over what TV show to watch. Is that really worth it? Are you really going to convince them to want to watch your show? Probably not. In my relationship, my wife makes 99% of decisions about what goes where inside of our home. And when I was 20 plus years ago, when I met her, I remember I would engage in these heated dialogues with her, these conversations, or you could even call them arguments in some cases, because I really wanted something to be a certain way. And for some reason, I learned that surrendering what I needed brought me a great deal of peace versus trying to have these arguments about stuff that just doesn't matter. In the end, I think, I don't know, I think we learn that things are not as important as they seem, you know? I'm not saying nothing matters, but I think I think we are quite ignorant about what can actually make us happy. And the more that we can just let go of everything, the happier we'll be. But back to my third point, that happiness it arises based on the mind. So if anybody's ever been through a breakup in a relationship, you will remember that the beginning was very, very difficult. And then a couple years later, you didn't even remember who that person was. And then maybe 10 years later, you quite literally never think of them. So the relationship itself is not capable of bringing you happiness. And a perfect example of that is if you broke up with somebody, many years ago, you thought you couldn't live without them. You thought you couldn't be happy without them. And now here you are, and you're quite happy without them in your life, and you don't even think about them. So this is just one example of the fact that another person cannot bring you happiness. Now, if there's somebody that you think is a beautiful person and you want to be with them, then you should go ahead and be with them. But I don't believe you should be with them because you want them to make you happy. I don't think you can put that responsibility on another person. I don't think it's realistic. And I think if you go into a relationship with the expectation that their job is to make you happy, I think that relationship is almost guaranteed to fail. And you may not use these direct and bold words that I'm using, but I think to a certain degree, everybody gets into to a relationship because they think it's going to make them happy. So if we could sort of shift our perspective on relationships to think, I think this is a lovely person and I'm going to be with them, but my expectation is to make them happy. I think if we can shift our expectation to make the other person happy and try not to have a whole lot of expectations on them, I think your life will be pretty great and pretty peaceful. And they probably will make you happy simply because you're not expecting them to, which is very ironic. And back to this point of what makes us happy is our own mind. When you go to see a psychotherapist or a a psychologist or psychiatrist, a lot of what they try to do is teach you something called cognitive reframing, which is changing the way you see life and the experiences of life, changing the way you respond to those things that you see, and kind of almost creating a new habit of how you interact with your own experience and your thoughts about those experiences. And so if we can start to try to change our outlook about everything in life, meaning if we can start to try to change our outlook that basically if we can understand that happiness comes from inside the mind, if we can understand that real joy and real contentment come from our own mind and our own mental functioning and the way that we respond to life's events and our own thoughts, that is the defining factor of happiness. For example, if you go out on a walk and you look around and you think, I'm so grateful to be healthy, to be going on a walk. I'm so grateful for this experience. Most likely, you're going to be pretty darn happy because you evoked, that you interacted with your experience and with the decision to be grateful. Now, let's do another, that's option A. Option A, you go on a walk and you think, I'm so grateful. Option B, you go on a walk and you think, I'm so irritated because my dog is pulling me. And oh man, it's hurting my shoulder. And oh, this guy's house is so ugly, he doesn't take care of his grass. And oh, it's too humid today. And oh, it's sunny. Why is it so hot in September? It's supposed to be fall. If you go on a walk like that and you just pick out all the negative things you hate about this moment, you are not going to be happy. Now, in option A, were you happy? Was that sense of gratitude a result of the things around you outside? Or were you enjoying that moment because of your thinking? Obviously, you were enjoying that moment because you evoked a sense of gratitude. You had this thought that I am grateful, and you concentrated on your thought. Oh, I'm so grateful. And then your body feels good when you do that. When you have a thought of, I'm so grateful, you could feel it in your chest. Your whole heart starts to open up and feel grateful. And then when you think, oh, I'm so irritated by my dog walks like a psychopath. She walks in circles instead of walking straight. Then what happens is your heart closes up and your body tenses up. Was that a result of your dog or your thinking? Because I was walking the dog when I was grateful, and I was walking the dog when I was miserable. It's the mind, it's the thinking. So happiness does not come from the outside. Happiness is a result of your thinking. Now, if you are sick and you need medicine, I'm not telling you not to take medicine. That would be so, I'm just going to use a kind of a bad word. That would be stupid to say, oh, Jason told me happiness comes from the mind, so I'm not going to take medicine. I feel like that's a lack of intelligence. You have to use your mind to understand nuance. Nuance means things are not black and white. Things are not black and white. Things are many, many millions of shades of gray. You have to understand that, yes, happiness comes from the mind, but that doesn't mean that you should stop eating food. Your body needs food for you to survive. You can't be happy if you're not surviving, right? Like, it's like, kind of, to me, it's common sense, but sometimes I have to mention these things. Another thing is, I've literally had people tell me, "Eh, you're telling me to let go. Should I just allow should women just allow their partner to beat them?" And that really, to me, is like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Of course not. Don't allow your partner to abuse you physically or verbally. Leave the relationship, get to safety. But once you're there in safety, if you're in a safe room and you're in a safe life and you're miserable because your mind is anxious and you're thinking about your deadline at work and you're angry because your dog snores or whatever. I'm just making up these examples of things that most of us use as we don't even realize we're doing it, but we make our lives unpleasant because we just go around picking out all of the things we're unhappy about. So don't allow basically make sure that you understand it is our thinking and our mind that makes us happy or unhappy. It's you know people, I know studies show that people are happier when they have relationships, but Buddha was a hermit that lived in the forest, and he attained enlightenment. And based on what I've learned, he basically he ultimately lived in a sense of bliss, and he was totally free of suffering. He did not achieve that liberated state due to having lots and lots of friendships. In fact, he left the palace. He had infinite friends, and Apparently, he had all these beautiful female musicians that he would spend time with. And he left all of that. He left the trappings of being a rich prince to go to the forest. And then he achieved true enlightenment, which is basically total freedom from unhappiness, total freedom from suffering. Can you imagine being in the happiest mood you've ever experienced, but then multiply that by a million and then experience that for eternity? That's basically what Buddha achieved. And so I don't think it's realistic to expect people, places, things, money, um, experiences, or you could say life's conditions. I don't think it's realistic to think that any of those things are going to bring us true peace. I think true peace comes from within, and it comes from a stability, a present moment stability, and really a mindfulness of what's happening in our mind. If we are mindful of the thoughts that are happening in our mind, then when we have the negative thoughts, we can let them go. If we lack mindfulness, we're not going to get very far in the practice. So, one of the best things we can do is take up meditation of mindfulness of breathing. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. If we can practice that for 30 to 60 minutes in the morning and 30 to 60 minutes at night, we can develop a very strong mindfulness. And then whenever thoughts, emotions, and you know, anger, difficulty, unhappiness, discontentment, whenever these things arise, we'll know they're arising and we won't allow them to continue proliferating. Because what happens in the mind is when anger or unhappiness arises, we think about that thing that made us angry, and then we start thinking more and more about it. Before you know it, you've wasted 3 hours. You've had a huge argument with somebody you love, and you've destroyed a relationship, all because you weren't mindful enough to see the thought arising. This is how we live our lives. So if we can practice mindfulness, we can really start to develop a wonderful practice of letting go. Okay, this has gone on too long. I love you all, my friends. I'm sending you warm wishes. You, excuse me, may all sentient beings benefit from this Dharma talk. Take care. Bye.